Welcome to Reflection Tuesday for July 28th, 2020. Today in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus explains the parable of the weeds among the wheat. And you know the story. A master planted good seed in his field, but then the weeds popped up too. And when his servants asked, "Do you want us to pull up the weeds?" the master said, "No, or you might pull up the wheat too. Let them grow together, and I'll deal with it later." We're surrounded by good and evil every day, the weeds and the wheat, intertwined in the roots of society and our relationships, and most importantly, in our hearts. They coexist in strange ways, the good and the bad. For example, sometimes you cannot medically remove a tumor from a vital organ without jeopardizing the patient's life. The good and the bad. Or isn't it strange that the glory of a martyred saint comes through the action of an evil tyrant? Good and evil are entwined in many ways: crucifixion, resurrection, Good Friday, and Easter. There are two hazards here. First, we can become judgmental about the weeds. And second, we can try and take God to task for allowing weeds to be there in the first place. Let's do that one first, taking God to task. Is it okay to lean on God a little bit about these weeds, about the evil in the world that we can clearly see? Come on, God, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you dealing with these weeds? Give us an account of why you let these weeds grow in the first place. Well, that would be the human approach to weed management, and clearly it's not the way God is handling it. Sometimes we try to force early judgment and punishment of the weeds by trying to pull them and burn them ourselves. Humans should not be in the weed pulling business. We should be in the weed prevention business. As long as a judgmental world tries to burn weeds, the wheat is also at risk. The wheat looks like weeds. Sometimes we can't tell them apart. So we destroy both, doing just what God said not to do. And God is horrified by what His children do sometimes. So what is God doing? What is His approach? God is patient and tolerant, and He can do that because He's God. He allows good and evil, the weeds and the wheat, to grow together rather than compromise the wheat. He delays in destroying the weeds because of a mercy that never loses hope. He hopes we can uproot our own weeds, or at least keep them from growing. God knows that if He gives in to our demands to act now against these weeds, crush His enemies, He must, in all fairness, also act against any weeds that we have ourselves. He also knows that bad people can become good, and good people become bad. God's purpose is not to pulverize His enemies. He loves them too much. His purpose is to change their hearts. That's the way God does it. He acts like a parent. Many of you are parents and grandparents. I think that parents have a trait that comes directly from God. As a former family therapist and counselor, I'm convinced of this. Parents not only want their children to do well, they want them to want to do well. That desire is in most parents. You can't learn it. You can't buy it at a store. It comes directly from God. If you can understand this, then you can understand why God delays. He wants the same thing for us. And so there's mercy and patience and tolerance and hope, just like any good parent. That's why He waits, in the hope that everyone's soul has a chance to catch up with Him. So let's catch up. Maybe instead of focusing on other people and their weeds, and occasionally being distracted by Christ, focus on Christ and occasionally be distracted by weeds. Also, check for weeds in your own heart. That's the only place where God wants you to pull weeds. Weeds take up a part of your heart that rightfully belongs to God. Make no mistake, there's always a battle between good and evil going on for your heart. Here's a little homework for today. Check your heart for weeds. You'll know a weed in your heart when you see it. It's what keeps others from seeing the presence of Christ in you. And then either deal with it or explain to Jesus why you choose not to. God bless. Stay well. See you next week.